I never thought it would come to this. I always believed they would eventually see the truth. But as the tension built and the accusations flew, I realized how wrong I was. That day, at the family gathering, everything changed. It wasn't just a dinner, it was a setup. They thought I would walk away. They thought I was weak, that I'd just let it all go. But what they didn't know was that I was waiting. Waiting for the right moment. The right moment to finally make them understand who I really am. It started with the way they looked at me, the way they talked to me, like I was invisible or worse, beneath them. My sister, Lisa, never hid her disdain. She made little jabs every chance she got, as if I wouldn't notice. But I did. And as much as I tried to let it slide, I couldn't ignore the feeling creeping up inside me, the feeling that they were pushing me into a corner, expecting me to just accept it. My parents, always the center of everything, had been too preoccupied with their own drama to notice the little cracks forming in our family. But it wasn't just Lisa. It was everyone. My mom, her overly sweet voice masking the judgment in her eyes whenever she spoke to me. My dad, who would make these little comments under his breath, almost as if I was some sort of disappointment he could never quite shake off. They thought they could do whatever they wanted. They thought I'd just sit there and take it. And for a while, I did. But that night, it all came to a head. I could feel the eyes on me, the whispered conversations that would stop as soon as I walked into the room. It was a familiar feeling, the one that made my stomach churn and my heart race. I couldn't put my finger on it then, but something didn't sit right. My aunt, who I'd always respected, made an offhand comment during dinner about how I was never quite able to get my life together. The word stung, but I held my tongue. I looked around the table, at all the faces that I had once trusted. Everyone was smiling, eating, laughing, oblivious to the tension in the air. But not me. I could feel it tightening around me like a noose. I wasn't sure if anyone else noticed, but I could see it in their eyes, the way they expected me to say something, to react, to prove them right. They wanted me to crumble. But I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. I stayed quiet, watched their faces as they played their roles in this perfect little family drama. They thought I was beaten. They thought they could push me to the edge and I would just walk away, but that wasn't going to happen. Not this time. And that's when I started to plan. I didn't know how or when, but I knew I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. Not my life, not my choices, not my future. They'd made their mistakes, underestimated me, and now, I was going to make them see the truth. I would wait for the right moment, the moment when everything would change, and they would have no choice but to confront the truth. But for now, I said nothing. I just sat there, watching, listening, and waiting. There was more to this than they could see. They couldn't just push me aside, and they couldn't make me disappear. Not without consequences. As the evening wore on, the tension was palpable. I could feel the eyes on me again, but this time, they weren't the ones in control. Not anymore. It was my turn to take charge. And when the time came, I would show them what I was really made of. I didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. This was where everything started to shift. But what I didn't realize at the time was how much I had already begun to change. How much I had already decided. They thought I would walk away, but I was already planning my next move. The question wasn't whether I would stand up for myself, it was when. And when that moment came, everything would be different. But how much longer could I stay silent before it all exploded? The dinner that night felt different. There was something off, but I couldn't quite place it. It was a typical Sunday family gathering at my parents' house, nothing extraordinary. Mom had cooked her famous meatloaf, and the conversation was supposed to be light, casual. But from the moment I stepped into the house, I could feel the weight in the air. Everyone was already seated at the dinner table, chatting, passing around food, but there was an underlying tension that was hard to ignore. My sister, Lisa, sat across from me, her eyes narrowed just slightly, as if she knew something I didn't. There was a coldness in her smile when she greeted me, as if she was putting on an act, pretending to be friendly. My parents, as usual, sat at the head of the table, engaging in some small talk with my brother, Sean. They didn't notice the subtle shifts in the room, or at least, they didn't acknowledge them. But I did. I could always tell when something wasn't right. The casual conversation felt forced, like everyone was trying to maintain a facade of normalcy. But I could sense it, the judgment, the silent disapproval coming from all sides. No one had said anything directly to me, but I knew they were talking about me behind my back. It was in the way they looked at me, how they would quickly change the subject when I walked into the room. And then, there was my father. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it always felt like a quiet reprimand. I could feel his eyes on me, as if I had disappointed him somehow, as if I wasn't living up to his expectations. And maybe I wasn't. Maybe he was right to be disappointed. But I couldn't help the feeling that there was more to it than just disappointment. There was something deeper, something personal. Mom always tried to smooth things over, tried to make everything seem perfect. But I knew her too well. I knew when she was pretending. I knew when she was hiding something. Lisa, my older sister, had always been the golden child. She had a way of getting everything she wanted, of making sure the spotlight was always on her. Growing up, I had always been in her shadow, constantly being compared to her, always falling short. I had learned to accept it, to live with it. But that night, something in the way she spoke to me, something in the way she looked at me, made me feel like I wasn't just her little brother anymore. I was a target. She casually mentioned how I still hadn't figured my life out, how I hadn't achieved anything of value. It was a throwaway comment, meant to sting but delivered with a smile. I laughed it off, but inside, it felt like a punch in the gut. I had heard this before, but this time it hit harder. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them, as if she truly believed I was a failure. I looked around the table, trying to keep my composure. Sean was busy talking about his latest business venture, trying to impress Mom and Dad. He was always the golden boy in their eyes, the one who had it all together, the one who could do no wrong. It was exhausting. The pressure to measure up, to be like him, was always there. But that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just about me being the failure in their eyes. There was more. I didn't know what yet, but I was beginning to feel it, the weight of something bigger than just sibling rivalry or parental expectations. I had always been the one to sit back and let things slide, to stay quiet when the criticisms came. But that night, I wasn't sure I could keep doing it. As the night went on, the tension only increased. The conversation grew more strained, more uncomfortable. I could tell something was building, something was about to explode, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was. I felt like an outsider in my own family, like I wasn't really part of the conversation, just a bystander watching everything unfold. The longer I sat there, the more I realized just how much had been left unsaid, just how much everyone had been hiding. I felt like I was on the verge of a revelation, but I couldn't quite put the pieces together yet. My mom noticed the tension too, but instead of addressing it, she simply changed the subject, offering more food, trying to lighten the mood. It worked, for a moment. But I wasn't fooled. I knew something was off. And I was starting to suspect that Lisa, Sean, and even my parents knew something I didn't. But what was it? What had they been hiding? And why did it feel like they were all in on some secret, while I was left in the dark? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to sit back and take it anymore. I wasn't going to let them make me feel small, make me feel like I didn't belong. I was going to find out what was going on, even if it meant confronting them, even if it meant tearing apart this carefully constructed family image. The question was, how much longer could I wait before I had to make my move? I had tried to ignore it, but the pressure kept building. The comments from Lisa, the way my parents looked at me like I wasn't quite good enough, like I was just some screw-up they didn't know how to fix, it was getting harder to keep my cool. It wasn't just the usual family banter anymore, this was something different. Something darker. As the week went on, I found myself thinking more and more about the subtle shifts I had noticed. It wasn't just about me not having my life together, as Lisa liked to say. It was about control. They were controlling me, controlling everything around me. They had a plan, and I wasn't part of it. I wasn't just the odd one out anymore, I was the problem. That was how they saw it. But I wasn't going to let that define me. It started to sink in slowly, like a drip of cold water down my spine. The little things my parents said when they thought I wasn't paying attention, the way they tried to make decisions for me, the way they always found a way to remind me that I was not the success story they had hoped for. My dad, especially. He had a way of making everything sound like a gentle suggestion, but it always carried the weight of an unspoken order. I had always respected my dad, even when I didn't agree with him, but lately, his words felt more like an interrogation. The look in his eyes when he talked to me, it wasn't one of encouragement. It was one of expectation. Expectation that I would follow whatever path they set out for me, without questioning. But there was a problem. I didn't want that life anymore. I didn't want to be a puppet in their little game. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let them push me into something I didn't want. It wasn't just a matter of career choices or finances. It was a matter of control. They wanted to keep me under their thumb, and it was slowly driving me crazy. Lisa was the first to start making it clear. Every time I spoke up, she had a way of twisting my words, making me seem like I was the one being difficult. Every decision I made was scrutinized, every plan I had was shot down with a sarcastic remark. And somehow, every time I tried to stand up for myself, they would make it seem like I was the one causing problems. It was like I was stuck in this loop, where no matter what I did, I was never going to be enough. But that wasn't going to be my reality anymore. I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep living in their shadow, couldn't keep letting them dictate my life. But at the same time, I couldn't just walk away. Not yet. They hadn't seen the real me. They didn't know what I was capable of. I started to notice something else too, something that sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just Lisa, it wasn't just my parents trying to control me. It was all of them. Every time I tried to make a move, every time I tried to push back, there was this invisible force that kept pulling me back in. It wasn't just the criticism. It was the way they acted like they were doing what was best for me, like they knew better. But all I could see was the control. The manipulation. And it was all wrapped in this perfect little package of family love. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. And the more I realized how deep it went. The manipulations were subtle, but they were there. It was like they had all agreed on a script, and I was the one who didn't know my lines. Every time I made a decision, it was met with resistance. Every time I tried to make a move toward independence, I was told it was a mistake. I was told I wasn't ready. But I was. I had to be. I had spent so many years trying to be the good son, the one who did what was expected of him. But it had never been enough. And now, I was starting to understand that the only person who could change this was me. That's when it all started to escalate. I had been quiet for so long, but my silence wasn't working anymore. I wasn't just sitting back and taking it. The tension was building, and I could feel it. Every time we sat down for dinner, every time we spoke, there was this underlying current of unease. I wasn't going to let them control me any longer. The moment was coming. I could feel it. And when it came, it was going to change everything. But what would it take? How much more could I stand before I had to act? I had been holding back for so long, but at what point would I break? I could feel it. The tension was thick, like a dark cloud hovering over the entire room. It had been building for days, and tonight, it was impossible to ignore. The dinner was supposed to be a casual family gathering, a chance to catch up, to relax. But the atmosphere was far from relaxed. It was suffocating. I could see it in the way they looked at me, in the subtle way they made sure to steer the conversation away from anything that would make me feel comfortable. And then, Lisa spoke up. It was almost like she had been waiting for the right moment, and now, she had it. "So, I heard you're still working at that job," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Still struggling, huh?" She said it like it was a joke, but there was no humor in it. I felt the weight of the words hit me, and for a moment, I couldn't even speak. Everyone else at the table went quiet, waiting for my reaction. I knew what they were all thinking. They were waiting for me to snap, to react, to give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. But I didn't. Not yet. I could feel my father's gaze on me, his usual disapproval written all over his face. I knew he didn't think much of my career, of my life choices. But tonight, it was different. Tonight, it wasn't just the usual disappointment. Tonight, there was something else. It was like they had all decided, without saying a word, that I was the one holding them back. That I was the one standing in the way of their perfect little world. Lisa's comment was just the beginning. I could see it now, the way they all subtly pushed me to the side, like I was no longer part of the family. They were all in on this silent agreement that I wasn't good enough. I wanted to stand up, to yell, to tell them how I really felt. But I didn't. I stayed quiet, watching them, feeling the anger rising inside me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized just how deep this went. It wasn't just Lisa. It wasn't just my parents. It was all of them. They had all decided that I wasn't worth their time, that I was the one causing all the problems. But I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not anymore. I wasn't going to be the scapegoat for their issues. And I wasn't going to let them push me around like this. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, threatening to spill over. But I held it in. For now. As the evening wore on, the tension only grew. Every little comment, every sideways glance, felt like another jab in the side. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. They didn't know that I had been planning this moment for a long time. I had been watching, waiting for the right time. And the time was coming soon. I could feel it. As Lisa continued to poke and prod, trying to get a rise out of me, I realized just how far she was willing to go to make me look bad. She didn't care about me. She didn't care about what I had been through. All she cared about was her perfect little life, her perfect little world. And I was the one standing in the way. I could feel my parents watching, waiting for me to react. But I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. Not this time. I was going to make them see who I really was. I wasn't the failure they thought I was. I wasn't the screw-up they had made me out to be. But the question was, how long could I keep up the act? How long could I pretend that everything was okay, that I was okay? I knew the truth. And soon, they would too. But for now, I had to keep my cool. I had to let them keep thinking they had control. I had to let them keep believing that I was the weak one. Because when the time came, when I finally made my move, it would be that much sweeter. But for now, I stayed quiet. I played along, just long enough to make them think they had won. And when the time came, when they least expected it, I would show them just how wrong they were. It was a small detail, something that seemed insignificant at first. But as soon as I heard it, something inside me clicked. It was late one evening, a few days after that disastrous dinner, when I overheard my father talking to Lisa in the living room. I had just stepped out of the kitchen, trying to find a moment to myself, when I heard their voices. They were talking in hushed tones, thinking no one else was around to hear. "He's never going to make it on his own," my dad said, his voice low, but heavy with conviction. "He needs us. He can't do it without the family. You know that, right?" Lisa's response was almost too quiet to catch, but I could hear the underlying bitterness. "I know. But I don't think he sees it. He thinks he knows everything, but he doesn't. He's just too stubborn. I stood frozen by the hallway, the weight of their words sinking in. They weren't just disappointed in me. They didn't just want me to succeed. They wanted control. They needed me to stay in their orbit, to keep playing my part in the family story they had written for me. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about me not living up to expectations. This was about them trying to keep me locked in place, trying to dictate the course of my life. It wasn't just my career, it wasn't just my finances. It was everything. They wanted me to stay dependent on them, to need them, to keep playing the role they had assigned me. And it made sense now. The comments, the subtle criticisms, the way they tried to steer me in a certain direction, none of it had been random. They had a plan. They always had. I started to realize how much of my life had been shaped by their expectations, by the roles they wanted me to play. My whole identity, everything I had worked for, had been based on what they thought I should be, what they wanted me to be. But I wasn't that person. I had spent so many years trying to please them, trying to meet their expectations. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. And now I understood why. They didn't want me to be independent. They didn't want me to make my own choices. They wanted me to be a reflection of their success, their values, their version of what a good son should be. I wasn't just disappointing them. I was threatening their control. And that thought, that realization, made something snap inside me. I had spent so long trying to be the son they wanted, trying to fit into the mold they had created for me. But I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't live my life based on their terms. I had to take control. But how? I knew I wasn't going to just walk away from everything. It wasn't that simple. But I could feel the pieces falling into place. I didn't have to play by their rules anymore. I didn't have to live in their shadow. I could make my own choices, build my own life, and if they didn't like it, that was their problem, not mine. But I couldn't confront them yet. I wasn't ready to face the fallout that would come with standing up to them, to everything they had built around me. No, I had to wait. I had to wait for the right moment. And when that moment came, I would be ready. But the question kept swirling in my mind, what was the right moment? How would I know when it was time to finally break free? As the days passed, I found myself becoming more and more aware of the way they treated me, the way they tried to control every aspect of my life. And with each passing day, the more I realized just how much I had been manipulated, how much I had let them dictate my every move. They had made me feel like I was nothing without them, like I couldn't survive on my own. But I was starting to see through it. I was starting to see the cracks in their perfect little world. The more I thought about it, the more I saw how much of my life I had spent living for them, not for myself. And that had to change. But it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about them. It was about showing them that I wasn't their pawn. I wasn't a character in their story. I was the author of my own life. And when I finally took control, when I finally stood up for myself, they would understand. They would see who I really was, and they would know that I was no longer going to be the person they thought I was. But I had to be careful. I had to be strategic. I couldn't just burst in and confront them. It had to be done the right way, at the right time. And I would wait for that moment. I would wait for the moment when they least expected it, when they thought they had won. And when that moment came, I would show them what I was made of. But for now, I kept quiet. I kept playing the role they expected of me. Because I knew that the moment I broke free, everything would change. And I wasn't going to waste that moment. The pressure was building, and it was becoming impossible to ignore. I had kept quiet for so long, letting the criticism and the manipulation roll off my shoulders, but now it felt like I was on the edge. Every interaction with my family seemed like another calculated attempt to push me into a corner, to make me doubt myself, to make me feel like I wasn't enough. Lisa's comments, my dad's subtle disapproval, my mom's constant suggestions, they were all taking their toll. But it wasn't just about them anymore. It was about me. It was about how long I could keep playing their game before I finally broke free. I knew I couldn't keep pretending to be the person they wanted me to be. I wasn't going to let them control me any longer. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had already been pushed too far. The anger had been building for weeks, and it was only a matter of time before it boiled over. I had been playing along, staying quiet, pretending that everything was fine, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. I was sick of being the scapegoat, the one who was always criticized, always belittled. I had worked so hard, but it was never enough for them. No matter how much I tried to prove myself, it was never good enough. My career, my choices, my life, they always found a way to tear me down, to make me feel like I wasn't living up to their expectations. And now, it was clear to me. They didn't care about my happiness. They didn't care about what I wanted. They cared about control. They wanted me to be who they wanted me to be, to fit into their perfect little world. And I was done. I had spent so much of my life trying to meet their expectations, trying to make them proud. But it was never going to happen. I was never going to be enough for them, and that was something I had to accept. But acceptance didn't mean resignation. It didn't mean I had to keep letting them control my life. It didn't mean I had to keep playing by their rules. I was done being the quiet one, the one who just took it all in. I was done pretending to be okay with it. It was time for a change, and I was ready to make that change. But it wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. I knew there would be resistance, that my family wouldn't just let me walk away from their control without a fight. But I didn't care anymore. I had spent too many years being manipulated, too many years being made to feel like I didn't matter. And now, I was going to make them see that I was done. The first step was to stop being so passive, to stop letting them have all the power. And that meant speaking up. It meant not letting their criticisms slide anymore. It meant standing up for myself, even if it meant upsetting the delicate balance of our family. But how? What was the right way to do this? How could I confront them without letting them twist it around and make it seem like I was the problem? I had been thinking about this for days, trying to figure out the best approach. I couldn't just go in guns blazing. I had to be strategic. I had to make them see that I wasn't the person they thought I was. That I wasn't going to be controlled anymore. I had to start small, test the waters. And so, the next time we sat down for dinner, I decided I wouldn't let their comments slide. I wouldn't play the role they wanted me to play. Lisa started in on me again, her usual snide remarks about my job, about how I was still figuring things out. Normally, I would have let it go, maybe even laughed it off. But this time, I didn't. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "You know, it's funny that you think I'm the one who hasn't figured it out. But maybe you're the one who doesn't get it." The table went silent. My parents exchanged a quick glance, and Lisa's face twisted in surprise. She wasn't expecting that. I could see the shock on her face, the realization that I wasn't just going to sit there and take it anymore. And for the first time in a long while, I felt powerful. I wasn't going to be the quiet one anymore. I wasn't going to let them control the narrative. The conversation awkwardly shifted to something else, but I could tell that something had changed. It wasn't just a small comment. It was a shift in the power dynamics. I had made the first move, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I could see the uncertainty in their eyes, the realization that I wasn't going to just roll over anymore. The next few days felt different. I wasn't just the passive observer anymore. I wasn't going to let them control me. Every time they tried to steer the conversation, to make me feel small, I pushed back. I didn't yell, I didn't get defensive. But I stopped being afraid. I stopped letting them walk all over me. But with that came a new kind of tension. It wasn't just about making small comments anymore. The dynamics had shifted, and I could feel the pressure mounting. My parents, my sister, they didn't like this new version of me. They didn't like me standing up for myself. It was becoming clear that they had underestimated me, and I wasn't going to let them take control again. The stakes were rising, and I could feel it. They were starting to push harder, starting to do everything they could to make me doubt myself. But I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. I could feel the final confrontation coming. I could feel the moment building, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything came to a head. The pressure had reached a boiling point. Every conversation, every comment, every glance from my family felt like a challenge now. I had stopped trying to play their game. I had stopped pretending to be the person they wanted me to be. But that only made things worse. They didn't know how to react to me anymore. They couldn't handle the shift in the dynamic. They had always thought I was the quiet, agreeable one, the one who wouldn't rock the boat. But I was done with that role. The cracks in their perfect family facade were starting to show. And I could see it. They were scrambling to regain control. The tension was thick, and I knew it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about power. About control. And I was taking it back. But there was more. The more I thought about it, the more I realized just how much they had been hiding. I hadn't known the full extent of it before, but now, it was all becoming clear. My family wasn't just disappointed in me. They weren't just upset that I hadn't lived up to their expectations. They were scared. Scared of what would happen if I truly broke free. I started to see the cracks in their own lives, the lies they had built their world on, and how they were desperately trying to keep me from discovering the truth. But I wasn't going to let that stop me. I had been patient, but now it was time. I couldn't keep waiting for the right moment. The moment was now. And when it came, I was going to be ready. It started with my mom. She always tried to keep things together, to make everything look perfect on the outside. But I had started to see through the act. She wasn't the calm, collected woman she pretended to be. She was terrified of losing control. She had always been the one who kept the family together, the one who made sure everything ran smoothly. But now, it was slipping through her fingers. I could see the cracks in her carefully curated persona, and it made me realize just how deep the manipulation ran. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the whole family. About everything they had built. They were all in on it, pretending everything was fine, pretending that I was the problem. But I wasn't. They were. And I wasn't going to sit back and let them keep lying to me. It wasn't just my parents. It was Lisa, too. She had always been the one who seemed to have everything figured out, the one who could do no wrong in their eyes. But I saw the jealousy in her eyes now. I saw the way she tried to belittle me, tried to make me feel small. And I knew it wasn't because she cared about me. It was because she was scared. Scared of losing her place in their perfect little world. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that my family wasn't just controlling me. They were controlling each other. They were trapped in this cycle of fear and manipulation, and I was the one who had to break it. But how? How could I expose the truth without tearing everything apart? I had been planning this for weeks, waiting for the right time, waiting for the perfect opportunity to show them who I really was. But now, I realized that there was no perfect time. I had to act now. I had to make them see the truth, even if it meant breaking everything wide open. The truth was that they had been lying to me for years. They had been manipulating me, trying to control my every move, trying to keep me in the shadows while they played their games. And I wasn't going to let them do it anymore. The day finally came when I couldn't stay quiet any longer. It was another family dinner, another attempt at pretending everything was fine. But this time, I was different. I wasn't going to let them control the narrative. The conversation started innocently enough, with my mom asking about my job, about how things were going. But I could tell she was fishing, trying to get me to open up, to give her something to work with. I could feel Lisa's eyes on me, like she was waiting for me to make a mistake. But this time, I wasn't going to make a mistake. This time, I was in control. I leaned forward and said, "I'm done pretending, Mom. I'm done letting you and everyone else tell me what I should do, what I should want. I've been quiet for so long, but I'm not staying quiet anymore." The room went silent. My parents looked at each other, their faces full of confusion and fear. Lisa looked like she had been slapped. She wasn't used to me standing up for myself. For the first time in years, I could see the shock in their eyes. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to react. But I wasn't done. "I know you've been trying to control me, trying to shape me into something I'm not. But I'm not your puppet. I'm not going to live my life the way you want me to. I'm going to live my life the way I want to." I could feel the weight of my words hanging in the air. I could feel the power shifting. They were no longer in control. I was. And for the first time, I felt free. But I wasn't going to stop there. I wasn't going to let them off the hook that easily. "You've lied to me for years. You've told me what to do, what to think, what to want. And I've been listening, thinking I had no other choice. But now I see the truth. And I'm not afraid to expose it." My father's face turned red. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Lisa looked like she had been punched in the stomach. The truth was out there now, and they couldn't take it back. They couldn't pretend anymore. And I knew that everything had just changed. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment when the power shifted. And they had no idea how much they had underestimated me. The silence that followed my words was deafening. My parents were staring at me, their faces a mix of shock, confusion, and anger. Lisa, her eyes wide, looked like she had just witnessed a completely different person, a version of me she didn't recognize. I could feel the weight of their gazes, trying to hold me down, but I stood my ground. For the first time in my life, I wasn't backing down. "You think you can control me, that you can dictate every part of my life," I said, my voice steady, unwavering. "But I'm done with it. I've spent too many years letting you decide what's best for me, and I'm not doing it anymore. I'm taking control of my own life." My father opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He wasn't expecting this, and for a moment, I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. It wasn't the same confident, commanding look he usually gave me. For the first time, he was the one on the defensive. "What are you talking about, son?" he finally said, trying to regain his composure. "This is your family. We're just trying to help you. You're not thinking clearly." His voice wavered, like he was trying to convince me of something I knew wasn't true. I wasn't buying it anymore. Help me? Or control me? "There's a difference, Dad," I said, my words sharp but controlled. "You've always made decisions for me, always pushed me into things I didn't want. I didn't get to have a say in any of it." The room felt heavier with every word. Lisa shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but she didn't say anything. She was quiet, for once. I could feel her tension, her fear. She wasn't used to this version of me, the version that wasn't afraid to speak up, to challenge her. "You've been controlling everything, and I've let you. I've let you tear me down, and I've let you make me feel like I'm worthless if I don't follow your path. But I'm not doing that anymore." My mother's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the tears of someone who was sad. They were the tears of someone who was losing control, someone who had no idea how to handle the situation. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "We've only ever tried to help you." The question was loaded with so much emotion, so much history. But I could see right through it now. It wasn't about helping me. It was about keeping me where they wanted me. "You're not helping me. You're controlling me. And you've been doing it for years." I took a deep breath, my heart racing but my mind clear. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. I've spent my whole life trying to meet your expectations, trying to be the perfect son, the perfect person. But nothing is ever enough for you, is it? No matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, I'm never good enough in your eyes. The truth had been building up inside me for so long, and now it was all coming out. There was no holding back. You've made me feel like I'm a failure, like I'm not worth anything if I don't follow your rules, your path. But I'm not going to live like that anymore. I'm not going to live for you. My dad's face turned red with anger, and for a second, I thought he might shout, might try to intimidate me into silence. But this time, it didn't work. This time, I wasn't scared. You think you can just walk away from all of this? My dad finally said, his voice cold. You think you can just leave and have it all figured out? You're not ready for that. No, you're right, I said, meeting his gaze. I'm not ready for it. But I'll figure it out. I don't need you to tell me what I can or can't do. I'll figure it out on my own. I could feel the shift in the room. The power had shifted. It wasn't them in control anymore. It was me. And I could see it in their faces. They didn't know what to do with me now. I wasn't the same person I had been. I had stopped being afraid of them. I had stopped letting them dictate my life. This is a mistake, my mom said softly, almost pleading. You're making a huge mistake, son. You're going to regret this. But I didn't believe her anymore. I had spent too long trying to be the person they wanted me to be. And now, I was done. Maybe I will, I said, my voice steady. But it's my mistake to make. And I'm ready to make it. The room fell silent again, but this time, it wasn't the uncomfortable silence of tension. It was the silence of realization. They knew now. They knew I wasn't going to be controlled anymore. The illusion of their perfect family was shattered. They couldn't pretend anymore. I had broken the mold they had created for me, and there was no going back. Lisa finally spoke, her voice shaking. You really think you can just walk away from all of this? You think it's that easy? I met her gaze, my eyes clear. Yes. I do. And with that, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The power had shifted, and the person they had tried to control for so long was no longer under their thumb. They had underestimated me, and now they would have to live with the consequences. It had been a week since that dinner. A week since everything had changed. The tension that had been simmering for so long finally boiled over, and now, there was no going back. The power had shifted, and for the first time, I felt in control. My parents, my sister, they all knew it. They could see that I wasn't the same person anymore. The version of me they had known was gone. And even though they tried to hold on to the remnants of their control, it was clear that I had broken free. But even now, as I sat back and reflected on everything that had happened, I could feel the weight of the consequences starting to sink in. It wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. It was about everything I had let slip by for years. The resentment, the unspoken tension, the control, they had all taken their toll on me, and now, I had to face the aftermath. The family dynamic was never going to be the same. My mother, who had always been the glue that held us together, was devastated. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the confusion, as if she couldn't quite understand what had gone wrong. I knew she wanted to fix things, wanted to pretend everything was okay again, but it wasn't that simple. The truth had been exposed, and now, the cracks in our family were too deep to ignore. Lisa, too, seemed like a different person. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced with a sense of uncertainty. She had always been the one to control the narrative, to make sure everything went according to her plan. But now, she was the one who was left questioning everything. It was almost like she didn't know how to deal with me standing up for myself. I could see the way she looked at me now, not with the same judgmental, condescending eyes, but with something else. Something more cautious. But even with all of this, I couldn't help but feel a sense of liberation. I had finally taken control of my life. I had finally stepped out of the shadows they had kept me in for so long. And as much as I hated the consequences of my actions, I couldn't deny that I felt free. The hardest part was seeing how much it had affected my father. He had always been the one who expected so much from me, the one who had set the bar impossibly high. For years, I had tried to live up to his expectations, tried to be the son he wanted. But now, I could see the disappointment in his eyes. He wasn't angry at me, not in the way I expected. He was hurt. He didn't understand why I had broken free, why I couldn't just follow the path he had laid out for me. And that hurt me more than I wanted to admit. But I knew I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't keep living my life for them. I had to live for myself. And in a way, I had already started to. But the consequences were still unfolding. My family was in turmoil, unsure of where to go from here. They had never had to deal with this before, never had to face the fact that their perfect little world wasn't as perfect as they had thought. It was painful to watch, to see them struggle with the reality of it all. But I also knew that this was the price of change. And I had paid it. I had taken the first step, and now I had to keep moving forward. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure, I was no longer afraid. I had faced the truth about my family, about myself, and I had come out the other side stronger. But the question still lingered in the back of my mind, was it worth it? Was the pain, the heartache, the destruction of everything I had known, worth the freedom I had gained? I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew this, I had chosen my own path, and no one could take that away from me. It wasn't going to be easy, but nothing worth having ever is. And as I looked at my family, at the wreckage of what had once been, I knew one thing, the road ahead was mine to choose. And I was ready to walk it, no matter where it led.